upload on YouTube. It's one I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been wanting to reach out to people and try to establish something that I feel like is lacking a lot in not only personal relationships, but families and just general overall interactions with people day to day. But this is my personal account of my experience with depression and mental illness. And it's my hopes that those that see this video are able to at least relate or find some strength in my story and the ability to overcome some things for themselves that may have been very traumatic and rather hard to handle and come to terms with. Or, you know, perhaps they're having thoughts right now that aren't things that they want to think, or are things that perhaps they feel like are the only option. And I'm here to let you know that there's always, always another chance for tomorrow, and there's always a chance for things to improve, and that you have to keep faith, and that you have to believe. And I know that's always easier said than done, but just listen to this story and hopefully you can find something to relate in. I'll do the best I can to try to get through this without crying as much as I can. But it can be hard because it is a rather difficult story. But I know a lot of things start at home for people, whether it's while you were growing up, or perhaps it's a relationship that you got into, or perhaps it's relationships that you've lost, be it romantic ones or friendships. They're all hard to lose. Loss is never fun in any manner whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it's a game or if it's real life. It's never really fun. But when I was a kid, I was really naive, really naive. My mother pretty much had me wrapped around her finger to do whatever she wanted me to do, however she wanted me to do it, and like who she wanted me to like, dislike who she wanted me to like, think what she wanted me to think. It was very orchestrated, and it was something that I didn't even realize was like feeling my overall independence and opportunity to like experience life and understand things. I was very isolated. I did not get the chance to really play with a lot of different other kids. I was extremely awkward. I was overweight. I had glasses. I had braces. I got picked on a lot and bullied in school. Got my glasses broken. Got my glasses broken, got my crucifix thrown in the woods. I've been made fun of a lot for a lot of different things, and I get that that's life. But it's hard sometimes for people who really don't have a lot going on outside of themselves to really deal with like ridicule. And I like to do poetry. Like I used to really like to do poetry a lot. I liked space a lot. I liked like the Harry Potter movies, things like that. I liked like to play Nintendo 64. Um, and yeah, like I lived with my grandparents and my mom. I was we used to live in the attic for a little while. But for some reason, I don't know why we moved out of the attic and moved downstairs. We used to stay in the attic because my aunt and uncle also stayed with us. Um, so once they moved out, we moved downstairs. And like I should have retained the room upstairs, but for some reason that wasn't the circumstance. So I ended up like staying in the same room with my mom for like 14 years, which again, like you really don't get any sort of like individuality with anything or to really experience life of your own. So that kind of sucks. Um, my best friend growing up relatively was a girl who like age wise equivalency, like I was in like fifth grade and she was in like kindergarten, and she was like my best friend for like many years when I was like younger, like before fifth grade. And that's like a pretty large like age separation relatively. But like that was like my social interaction or whatnot. I did have a couple other friends that I had made from school. There were a couple like other girls or whatnot that I had made friends with. And there were like a couple guys too, but like a lot of guys really didn't like me too much because I was just like, I guess, awkward or weird or I don't know, stupid or out of shape or whatever the hell it was. I don't know. Um, but when I was 14, my mom ended up getting pregnant, and I went from being an only son to like only child to eventually having a sibling. But uh, we moved out of my grandparents' house and into an apartment. And that's pretty much like the gist of this story from my mom's side of it. My dad, I when I was really young, like my mom and dad like had like a lot of problems and issues, and like I guess my dad drank a lot, and my mom and dad fought a lot, and I guess like my dad was like physically aggressive, or abusive or whatever. I'm not sure. I wasn't there, so I can't physically account for that, so I don't know how things were. But I do know that my mother can be a very physically aggressive person and be an extremely like mentally um like taxing and draining person, and be very like wicked and spiteful with the things that are like said. Because there were times where like I was pushed into walls and I had like nails pushed into my neck. And I was told like I'm gonna be sent to go live with my father because like I'm just like my father, and like that's the life that I want to live, so that's where I'm gonna be sent to, which was really traumatic for me because like all I really knew was like my grandparents and like the couple friends that I had from the area that I was in. So like that was really scary for me. But for a long time I went for visitations with my dad. And I had nice interactions with him. We used to play Nintendo 64. Um, we used to play Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. And he wasn't a perfect individual. Like he liked to drink for sure, but it wasn't necessarily to a detriment or anything that was like um, harmful to me. My dad, when he was younger, though, did have an issue where I think he was drunk driving and did crash into somebody's like house. So yeah, that's pretty serious, obviously. But I don't know. Obviously, he had got his license back, and that had since transpired from his record. So I would have to imagine whatever sort of time frame was with that was potentially when he was much younger. And like I said, things can be really difficult. He had his first son taken from him. I don't know if it happened after that or before that, what the scenario was. Um, but regardless, I was manipulated to believe that my father was an abusive person because like we used to play punch buggy when we saw punch buggy like Volkswagens, um, and I would get bruised because like obviously he's a grown man and I'm a kid, so if I get like hit, I'm gonna get a bruise. But it wasn't like it was in the face or anything. Like usually it was on like the leg or like the arm or something. Like it was something just like it kind of like toughened me up in a way because like I was an extremely soft individual. That's why I got picked on so much, because I was a very easy target for things. Um, but I was manipulated into thinking that my father was abusive, so I had thus spawned a hatred for my father, and stopped going for visitations altogether. And then I had sorry, this is a little bit scattered or whatnot, but I had moved out when I was 18, because I just didn't want to be there anymore with my mom and all of that stuff going on there. There's so much to talk about with that. It's not even funny. Um, but that could be, for another time, or personal questions if anybody has any, anything they want to ask me in like messages or DMs or anything. Um, but I had a girlfriend that I had been dating for probably 2 years worth of my student career or whatnot, and she was having like some trouble at home too, like with her dad. He was extremely oppressive, um, and very controlling, and the general gist of her family was kind of outside of her mom, but the family itself was so controlling that it kind of kept my girlfriend and her mom like in a bubble where they had to like step a certain way, do things a certain way, be a certain way, and that was like how it was, and none of it was ever good enough, which was extremely relatable to my life because I did everything I could to try to help with my brother. Um, and I really didn't do as most things that like a lot of other kids do, like going outside all the time or hanging out with their friends or staying out later or staying up later or anything like that. Like I always had to have like anybody that hung out with me had to come over to my house. They had to be at my place, and I like pretty much had to like stay there, and that was it because like I had to babysit because like my mom was like going through um medical problems or whatever, where I guess she was having like nerve issues, so she was taking like painkillers, but she was allergic to the reaction in the painkillers or whatnot. So she would take like a Benadryl or something to counteract the allergy, and between like the numbing of the painkillers and the sleepy factor that like the Benadryl or antihistamine like provides, it's just like your mom's always asleep. So for 4 years, relatively beyond when my stepdad wasn't at work, or when my stepdad was home from work, which he worked like 2 different jobs, sometimes like 3 different jobs. I mostly had to be responsible for my brother. So I mean, never did I really get to interact with people too much. But I moved out at 18 after I graduate. Um, got a job. I was working at Sears at first, and then like Sears was gonna be closing or whatnot, and I was like getting sketched out about that, so I got a job at Best Buy. Um, and I was working at Best Buy. Krista turned 18, and she moved out with me during her senior year to stay at a friend of mine's house that was like nearby where the high school, kind of like nearby where the high school would be or whatnot. And whatchamajig, things were like okay, but they were a little bit weird. It was an extremely like weird living situation, like staying at like a friend's house that's like my friend's parents' house, but it was just an extremely weird situation that was like just you'd have had to have been there, and it's not even really worth describing. But long story short, um, my